Hi, and welcome back to Broadsheet Sydney Around Town. If it's your first time here, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss a video. Let's get into it. So if you're looking to see a film this weekend, Broadsheet's Lucy Bellbird, who is sat in front of me right now, she has a really good recommendation, Limbo. Tell us about this new film from Ivan Sen, who is the director of the Mystery Road movies.
It is such a good film. It's one of those movies that you watch and then you find yourself thinking about for days afterwards. I watched it a couple of weeks ago before it came out, and I'm thinking about it regularly still. It was just so visually beautiful and such a compelling story and amazing performances from everyone involved.
So this particular film, it already premiered at Berlin Film Festival and it's in Australian cinemas now. It is the new one featuring Simon Baker that critics have said he is just unrecognisable. Some people have said he's kind of Walter White-ish.
He is quite Walter White-ish. It's just a very different Simon Baker than you'd be used to. Like if you knew him from The Mentalist or Devil Wears Prada, this is a totally different guy. It's a sort of shaved head, a bit more haggard, tattered. Like clearly it's a man who's been going through something. And that shows in his whole body and his whole performance.
So he plays a detective who has gone to a town called Limbo, ostensibly investigating a murder. And that murder is of an Indigenous woman from many years before. How does the story kind of pick up?
Well, they're calling the film a sort of outback, neo-noir, Western sort of classic. And like most of those films, it sort of begins when a stranger, in this case, Simon Baker's character, Travis, rolls into town and he's been sent there sort of on a fool's errand, you know, like drive out to the middle of nowhere and solve this case that no one really expects him to solve. So from the very outset, he's just there to tick some boxes and say that he came. But when he finds himself actually stuck in limbo due to car troubles, he's compelled to start investigating the case in a way that he wouldn't have otherwise.
And when he starts his case, he goes to a file, the police files, and what does he discover?
Next to nothing. It's a case that people hadn't really looked into. You get the sense that it was one of those things that might have been able to be solved if someone had put energy into it at the time, but they'd made quite racistly charged assumptions and just put it in a filing box to sit there until this detective, Travis, finds it decades later.
If you're a fan of the Mystery Road series and also films, is this something that's going to be like a real natural progression?
Ivan Sen, who's the director of Mystery Road and also of the Beneath Clouds film as well, he wrote the film, he directed it, he produced it, he composed some of the score, he did all the cinematography, he edited the whole thing. It's like when you do like all the parts in a group project, his name's all through the credits. And his visual style is so on show in the film. And so if you're a fan of his work and his directing, you won't be disappointed. I think this is really up there with some of the best of his work as well.
A little fact I know about this filmmaker is that he spent some time working with the police when he was younger because it was one of those first jobs, like a work experience type job that he went into, and he was one of the first Indigenous people to go and do that in where he grew up in his town. Let's talk about the location. So this is all filmed in Copenhagen.
Yes.
And obviously this opal mining town has a lot of underground living, and this is all shot in black and white. So tell us about how that kind of influences the way that you watch this film and what it makes you feel.
Obviously in Copenhagen, people genuinely live underground because of the heat. They live in caves cut into the rock there. And this is a story that really investigates the underworld as well as things that people want to keep buried or keep hidden. So thematically, it works really beautifully. The black and white, I thought, as well, was such an interesting choice because Copenhagen, for such a small town, it's been on our screens quite a lot. It's in Mad Max and Simon Baker had actually shot there before for Red Planet, and usually Cooper Pedy stands in for Mars because it looks so
the red
otherworldly.
colour, the dust of the ground at the time.
And when I heard that they were going to take a place that was so known for its vivid colours and shoot it all in black and white, I was like, this is such a bold choice and a really interesting one from Sen, and I think it really pays off in the film.
You also interviewed Simon Baker for Broadsheet. As part of that, he talked about working with non-actors to make this film. What did he say?
There are 3 child characters in the film that are the nieces and nephews of Charlotte, who's the girl at the centre of this disappearance murder that is the central plot of the film. And they obviously never knew their aunt, but you see how their lives have been so deeply affected by her disappearance in the way that it's affected their parents and their ability to go on and parent them. But the kids in this case are local kids from Cooper Pedy, and they obviously grew up in the town. They're really comfortable with each other. They grew up with each other. And what Simon Baker said about working with the children is that he loves working with kids and non-actors because they just so naturally tell the truth. They don't have any artifice. They're not trying to say how would I approach my performance here? They're just feeling things and saying the lines. And, if you want someone to play a kid from Cooper Pedy, get a kid from Cooper Pedy to do that. One thing he did mention was how shooting it in black and white allowed him to be quite subtle with his performance. He said that in his mind, there's a part of your brain that's taken up with processing colour. And when you're not looking at the colours and being distracted by the red dirt of Cooper Pedy, you can really focus on just the drama and the story happening before you. And I'd love to just look back at it. And also just the whole thing. You could freeze any frame and it would look like just a beautiful photograph or a work of art. So it's visually really beautiful, even if you're not that compelled by the story, which I was very compelled by the story. But yeah, it's gorgeous.
Well, you've completely convinced me. I'm going to carve out some time this weekend to try and watch it. So Limbo is in cinemas now. Thanks, Lucy. Hi, Holly. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you, Emma?
You're looking particularly fashionable today.
Yeah, I know.
You're wearing a new top from Ganni.
It's actually from their last season, but I have been eyeing it off ever since I saw Emma Chamberlain wear it to Copenhagen Fashion Week. And then I found it secondhand on Depop, but I'm still a Ganni girl.
You are a Ganni girl. Now, all this will make a lot more sense when I say that Ganni has just launched its first flagship store in Sydney. You have said in your article for Broadsheet that it felt more like an art gallery. So let's talk about what it feels like to shop in this new place.
Yeah, so it's definitely a very pleasing shopping experience. From the exterior, there's the gold lighting, there's the lights near the entrance that say Ganni, and then when you first walk in, all of the walls are different colours. So they're pink, they're blue, orange, and there's artworks everywhere. And all of them are actually by female talents, which is really lovely. There's, just the way the clothes have been set out is just a very Ganni experience. And then when I spoke to Didi, that's exactly what she wanted them to feel like all of the other global stores, but it's not just shopping off a shelf. It's, you're walking around and you're picking things up, and it's just really pleasing and fulfilling. And
so you spoke to the owners or the co-founders of Ganni, which is a Scandinavian brand. If people aren't familiar, can you tell us what is their aesthetic?
I think it's really playful, a lot of colour. It's quite diverse as well. So they have the sweaters, the vests, which I'm currently wearing, as well as some really lovely and kind of going out pieces that you can dress up, dress down. There's shoes, there's bags. They're very diverse, but colourful and playful is definitely the key elements of the brand.
Tell me, what is a Ganni girl?
A Ganni girl? So I think anyone that's been to Copenhagen, they'll recognise them, which is essentially just anyone, not just a girl, wearing the brand. But it's just really a kind of effortless style that feels really put together. And I guess maybe I am one.
Maybe you've become one.
Yeah.
So I know that the co-founders were saying they were looking forward to seeing what an Aussie version of a Ganni Girl is. Do you have any insight on that?
I don't know. Maybe like very Bondi. I feel like the aesthetics kind of seen in Bondi as well. That cool, calm, casual lifestyle sort of feel. Yeah.
They've opened their new store in the galleries in the CBD. And I know that they've worked with a local Sydney artist to kind of bring the space to life. Can you tell us about that? Because she works at Cafe Frida's.
Yeah, so she co-owns Cafe Frida's, and they actually had the launch dinner at Cafe Frida's. So I think if anyone's been into the venue, that's also kind of the same aesthetic as the store. So they tied in really well together. So yeah, she's created an artwork which sits in the center kind of bit of the store on the back of one of the walls. She also has designed 100 exclusive T-shirts with her artworks on them. She also, for the launch party, had designed like one of the artworks, like it was hanging in Cafe Frida's, which is also on the exclusive T-shirt. So that was a really fun, nice tie into the celebration. And yeah, as I said, I feel like the brands are really aligned.
Thanks for coming in and telling us all about it. You can find Ganni's new store at the galleries in the city.
Thanks, Emma.
And that's all we have time for today. As always, you can keep up to date with what's happening around Sydney at broadsheet.com.au and at broadsheet_Sid on Instagram.